Mercedes threw everything at him today. Charles Leclerc has coped brilliantly. He won in Spa. He wins in Monza.
The sun is out. The smiles will be out. At 18 years and 227 days old, Max Verstappen wins a Formula One Grand Prix.
The man that woke up this morning on the verge of an historic 92nd win in Formula One. Records are there to be broken, said Michael Schumacher. The record is broken. The one here has Toro Rosso, and they are going to win in 2020 as AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly wins the Italian Grand Prix. The man who was in last place at the end of lap one comes home to win the Sakhir Grand Prix.
Now, I don't know about you, but these are moments I want to capture. The excitement, the adrenaline, the wins, and the glory. All of it. But first, let's just take a step back for a bit and explain how I even got here. Now, welcome back to another episode of the Focus In podcast, where we discuss photography and technology. And I'm your host, Ethan. Today, I ask myself another question. What are other things that I would like to take pictures of? Well, this question hasn't per se bothered me, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind. I've always said that I love street photography, but in truth, I've never really went out and did it, mostly because of the things that come along with street photography. Things such as taking pictures of other people, getting their consent. To get the best shots, you have to get them unguarded, but not everybody's okay with that, which is understandable. But what are other types of photography that I would have done if I weren't on this path right now? Well, today I'll be discussing one of the different types of photography that I would like to do. And if this episode gets 10 views, I'll do a part 2 to this episode. And I'm hoping that this intro at least revealed it a little bit. Now, just for a little refresher, I love street photography. But there are times where I want to change subjects every now and then. Even though, compared to what I'm going to talk about, street photography is way more accessible. Street photography, funny enough, actually isn't very popular compared to other types of photography. Usually wedding photography and portrait photography are really up there. But I always see that street photography just ends up in the honorable mention or special mention section, which is kind of sad. However, street photography is very common and actually highly regarded. I actually started out with floral photography, and then I started to develop my love for street photography by looking at other photographers, social media, YouTube, and mostly Koko Yamaguchi. And eventually, like I said, I would love to start one of these days. But before we get to the next topic, let's take a little break before we head into the next segment. Hey everyone. This is a little bit of an in-between segment, but I'm looking for more team members for the Focus In podcast. I'm specifically looking for a writer, editor, and even an audio engineer. So if you hear this and you know somebody, please send this out to them. However, for a disclaimer, there will be no pay. So yes, it is voluntary. Just because of the fact that this podcast is very small, and I have to reach a certain milestone before Spotify allows me to monetize, let alone if I even get a sponsor or anything like that. However, I'm hoping and praying that as a podcast grows and we become monetized, I'll be able to then discuss payments and do splits. However, now I'm looking for volunteers in those positions. Once again, I'm looking for a writer, editor, and an audio engineer. You can reach out to me via X or Instagram. However, I do prefer you reach out to me via X, but if you reach out to me via Instagram, that's also okay. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. Now, let's get back to the episode. Welcome back, listeners. Now, I'll talk about a different series I would love to do someday. I would love to delve into the motorsports photography. Series such as Formula One, the World Endurance Championship, which I'll just refer to as WEC from now on, Super GT, and IMSA have always interested me. I started out with Formula One because my teacher mentioned it, and my family is kind of into Formula One. I looked into it and I was like, oh, this is simple enough. I tried it or watched it, and I loved it since then. Formula One has gotten a bit stale over the years, in my opinion, so I decided to delve into other racing series to keep myself to scratch that racing itch. Now, there's a well-known photographer. His name is Vladimir Rice. Hopefully, I pronounced his last name correctly, as it is spelled RYS. Anywho, he does Formula One photography for the Oracle Red Bull Racing F1 team. He also does other types of photography, and I looked on his website. It seemed as if he's done photography for the Ferrari team and the Mercedes team. However, I don't know if he was ever contracted back then or whatever, but I wouldn't know the details. But as far as I know right now, he seems to be contracted with the Red Bull F1 team. There are a lot of techniques that Vladimir uses that I really appreciate, yet it's so simple yet so effective. He uses his up close and personal shots. He always makes sure to capture the emotion in the moment. For example, whenever he takes shots of Max Verstappen or Sergio Perez, those being the drivers for Red Bull, he takes them with Max or Sergio in the foreground and the audience and crowd in the background. Now, this sounds very standard, which it is, but the way he does it, it's just a certain style to it that he does. And it shows, you can see with the audience, it shows the support that he gets, that Max or Sergio gets whenever they win a race or they do something that they accomplish. It's always something enjoyable, which I really like. Now, motorsport photography isn't black and white. See what I did there? There are many challenges when it comes down to getting the right shot. Sometimes the lighting conditions can be off because of rain, and sometimes the deciding factor of getting that shot is if you're close enough or not. And sometimes that can depend on your lens, your focal length, and your positioning. Vladimir Rice takes dynamic and expressive shots that always feel fresh and new, and they make you feel as if you're in the moment with the driver. Whether a win or a loss, you always get to see that emotion and you always get to feel it, as if you were right there, as if you bought a ticket and you went to that race. I love specifically these two shots. The shot that he took of Max Verstappen when he won the 2021 F1 World Championship. You really got to see that Max Verstappen was emotional and how he really wanted this win. Not only just the win, but how he really wanted this championship, let alone it being his first. That also reminds me of the first time. Well, sorry, not the first time. It also reminds me of another shot that I don't think he took, probably another photographer, but it could have been him, that took the famous shot of Sebastian Vettel kneeling down towards his car when he won the 2013 F1 World Championship. It's funny how it's the same team, Red Bull, but my point still stands. You really got to see the emotion of these drivers. Yes, being there does cut it, but at the same time, that's what photography, in my opinion, is about, capturing the moment. And I think Vladimir Rice does a wonderful and splendid job of this. Motorsports photography is also very fast-paced and doesn't allow for many mistakes. While there are many opportunities, you don't have a good amount of time in between. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say I want to catch a specific car, right? I'm only going to see that car once every minute because of how fast they're going. Now, if I miss my first and second chance of getting that shot, I have to wait 1 or 2 minutes for that car to come back around, only giving me a fraction of a second. Well, that's a lie. Sorry. Only giving me a very few seconds to get that one shot. However, you can be very prepared for this. And actually, now that I mention it, if it were up to me, here's how I would prepare for a race weekend and how I would theoretically go about it. I would use a camera with a large sensor. Like my camera of choice would be the Sony Alpha 7 III, equipped with a 200 to 600 millimeter telephoto zoom lens, a 50 millimeter prime lens to get those crispy shots, and to prepare for the off chance that I ever get to get up close and personal with the drivers, but I'll keep on dreaming. I'd also get an 18 to 135 millimeter lens just so I can have something versatile and lightweight, allowing me to be quick on my feet. Once again, no pun intended. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd probably see if I could either purchase those paddock or media passes, because I always see very famous F1 YouTubers having those passes. I now think it is the right time to have another break, so I'll be back with our final topic for the episode. Welcome back, listeners. I'm back with the final topic for today. Hope I didn't talk your ears off, but let's get right back to it. Motorsport series such as IMSA give you guides and spots where you can get the best shots. WEC and IMSA have races that last as short as 6 hours and as long as 24 hours, so there are lots of photo opportunities. X, or formerly known as Twitter, was one of the factors that made me consider motorsport photography, since I follow the Formula 1, WEC, Super GT, and IMSA accounts. I also follow the Super Formula, which is basically just Japanese Formula 1. You always get a new perspective about the car and the driver's style. It's always nice to see the latest and greatest shots taken by these photographers in a race weekend, and it always continues to inspire me as a photographer, even if I don't do that type of photography yet. One thing about motorsport photography is that it's never stale. It always offers something new, and you can get many different perspectives from the same race weekend. IMSA, in my opinion, is the most accessible in terms of photography. And it's also based on the fact that I'm just here in the States, and IMSA is mostly an North American-based motorsport. But with its price point and how long they stay, you're bound to find at least one car that you will want to take pictures of. Let alone the fact that your tickets come with a garage access, whether you like it or not. Which, for me, I like it. IMSA also has 4 classes racing at the same time: GTP, LMP2, GTD, and GTD Pro. To make it simple and break it down, the GTD and GTD Pro are the ones with the souped up road cars that are turned into race cars. And LMP2 and GTP are the funny looking long cars. My point is, there's a lot to take, and you will never not have a shot to take. For the IMSA series, I would say I would use the same camera. However, I would go for more side shots of the car, since I want to show off the livery of the cars. And I think that it shows how these teams want to compete and win it all. I especially have a soft spot for the Porsches, the BMWs, specifically the BMW M Hybrid and the BMW M4 GT3, and many other cars on the grid. Also, if I wanted to really switch it up, I'd also go with a Canon camera. However, I don't know which one I'd go with yet, since Canon is pretty reputable. And actually, fun fact, Canon was a sponsor for a Formula 1 team back then. I believe it was a Williams team, but I wouldn't remember off the top of my head. But that's a wrap for today's episode. I really do hope you enjoy. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of our small community, so I ask that you please follow me on social media. The links are on the podcast page. I post my photography, on there bi-weekly, so please support me. Also, don't forget to share the podcast with family and friends so we can have a greater outreach and expand the Focus In family. Until next time, folks, don't forget to focus in.